Hey there. So we talked about some different ideas people had about France, and I just wanted to see what I could add to that. And you see here the French flag of the Revolution, which I'll keep throughout the presentation. So this flag is still the French flag, but it was created for the French Revolution that we're about to study. There's so many different ideas we have about France. Maybe you were thinking about baguettes. Maybe you were thinking about the French beret, which in England, to make fun of people, they call a berry. Maybe you were thinking about the Eiffel Tower, all these kind of stereotypical ideas about France, but the baguettes and the Eiffel Tower, that's for real. This is a geographic map of France, and just wanted to point out that it has a lot of really high mountains that form the borders with the nearby countries. That's also what makes it such an exciting place for bicycling and hiking and all kinds of activities. And the two big rivers in France, the Loire and the Seine, that flows through Paris, kind of define a lot about French life. Something that you'll want to remember for our study of world wars is that the capital city of France, Paris, is very close to the Belgian border and to the German border by implication. So keep those things in mind as we go forward. People think of France as a place where people speak French, and that is, of course, true. But it's really important to know that France and its sense of itself as a nation is really a function of the French Revolution, and a kind of superficial covering over a different kind of a place. At the time of the French Revolution, only about 25% of French people actually spoke French. In reality, they have about what is this, like 20 different languages that are spoken in France, some of which survive very aggressively today, including the Basque language and Catalan, Alsatian, Flemish. These are languages that are still very important to people, and it's an ethnic identity that is a subset of what people see of themselves as French. So keeping that in mind, that France is kind of a creation, a national creation on top of a very diverse ethnic group, then also know that because France has been a colonial power for over 100 years now, there are in France many, many populations of third, fourth, fifth generation folk who come from North Africa, West Africa, Central African colonies of France, former colonies of France, and or the former Asian colonies of France, like Vietnam. And so this image that we have of the white French person is neither descriptive in the sense that white means the same thing in France that it does here. It doesn't, and it also doesn't describe the French people today. Although African Americans often found France to be a refuge from American racism, and you have the famous singers and movie stars who moved to France to get away from American racism. In reality, for French African descendants, there has been a long experience of racism in France, and there's right now a huge Black Lives Matter movement in France, which is centered on this young man who was killed by the police, Adama. And hopefully we can watch a little bit of this video in class from Al Jazeera. The French traditional religion is Catholicism, and you might remember that from the story of Joan of Arc. There are other Christian groups in France, but it's very small. But one of the legacies of the French Revolution is that is a very strong anti-religious feeling, both the idea that religion is a very, very private issue and should be completely separate from public life, and then also a lot of people who don't believe that religion is helpful to them at all. So this is 25%. It's actually the lowest number I've ever seen for non-religious French. I think it has been much higher. And then something that is important to know is that the Muslim population in France is large and growing, and this is caused some stresses in society, but also offers some new ideas for France. Yeah. I could tell you so much different things about French culture, but I thought we'd talk about sports a little bit. You know that I've told you about the Tour de France, which is the biggest bike race in the world, and just finished. A Frenchman has not won the Tour de France in ages and ages and ages, and it's kind of a national heartbreak. But one of the riders most distinguished himself this year and in previous years is Julian Alaphilippe, who is what they call a breakaway artist, leave the bunch and go way out and win the occasional stage that way. You probably know a little bit about French soccer. There's obviously all kinds of teams inside of France, but the national team of France won the World Cup in 2018, and they're pictured here. And perhaps their most famous star player, Kylian Mbappe. So that's something to check out on YouTube if you like soccer. And I thought maybe I'd share with you a little bit about French music. The most famous French pop singer of all time is Edith Piaf, and perhaps the most famous pop song in France of all time is La Vie en Rose. And so an old song and kind of corny, but I thought I'd share with you just a few little pieces of it so you can get it, because you'll recognize it and get a sense.
Des yeux qui font baisser les miens, un rire qui se perd sur sa bouche, voilà le portrait sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Quand il me prend dans ses bras, il me parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose.
All right, so that's your little sample, and you can come back and listen to more of it if you like. But I'm hoping that you recognize that one from the movies, that sort of whiny, sad song, which the French called chanson. It's like the epitome of a song in French culture. But getting a little more modern, this is a rap singer who's big deal in France right now, and very political. So, I like that, and thought I'd share with you a sample. Come on.
Tout le monde veut sauver la planète, mais personne veut descendre les poubelles. Ça sert à rien de tirer la sonnette, mettre des gilets de sauvetage sur les sirènes. Plus leurs téléphones sont intelligents, et plus les gens sont de plus en plus cons. Je sais pas si j'ai le syndrome de Peter Pan, mais moi je veux pas que mes gosses connaissent ce monde. Oh non, c'est mieux de construire des enfants forts que de réparer les adultes cassés. Faire des enfants forts que de réparer les adultes cassés. Faire des enfants forts. Trois chamallows qui grillent sur l'incendie. Quand il pleut, on porte le maillot, pas le parapluie. J'essaie de leur rendre la guerre un peu moins horrible, comme dans La vie est belle de Roberto Benigni. Les pierres qu'on m'a lancées, elles serviront de ricochet.
So just little samples for you. You can come back. The singer's name is Medine, and the song is about the discrimination that he and his family face because he is Algerian descended and multiracial French family. So I'll let you explore more about France on your own with that introduction.